Hello, everybody from the World Wide Web. We are today tuning in from Tallinn. This webinar, the first webinar under the Beamline Accelerator series, is called The Future of Energy. Today we'll be talking together with Georg Rute from Elering and Kristjan Kuhi from WePower, and Ron Bloomers from Startup will be moderating this session. First of all, I'd like to thank all the people who have registered for this event and who are tuning us in live here from all over the world. We're super glad to bring you this session. Very interesting topics that are waiting for you down in the pipeline for the next 1 hour. So we will be brief, interesting, as I also promised, and with some great opportunities and inspiration for your future entrepreneurial spirits and minds. Maybe just a couple of words about what is Cleantech ForEst and what is Beamline Accelerator. Well, Cleantech ForEst, as in Clean Technologies for Estonia, is the Estonian cleantech startup support organization. So we incubate, we accelerate, we find funds, we help the Estonian cleantech sector to grow rapidly and beyond the borders of our small nation, a digital nation that is. And Beamline Accelerator is, simply put, an accelerator aimed at Central Eastern European energy and smart city topic startups who are looking to fund their ideas, their innovations. But without further ado, I will give this mic over to Ron Bloomers from the Netherlands, straight from Amsterdam, who will be moderating this session and will be taking it from here. If the audience has any questions, please pop them under the discussion in the Facebook Live. And also a small hint that my colleague will be posting a Techstar Startup Week and Sustainability event under the discussion as well, for those who would like to take this learning that they have gathered from this session and would like to turn it into a reality. So we will be providing you with a Techstars Startup Weekend, a hackathon for those spirited minds. So here you go, Ron.
Thank you so much, Erkki. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Cleantech ForEst and Sunny team with the launch of the International Cleantech Beamline Accelerator. That's now 3 weeks ago, I think, right? It's fully up and running. As I understand, this is the first session. Thank you for having me as a moderator. It's a great privilege. It's a great privilege to already work for 5 years with Cleantech ForEst. But let's dive in as quickly as possible, I would say. And I would just like to start with our two rockstar speakers to shortly introduce themselves, right? So, Georg, let me start with you. Could you please introduce yourself shortly? We will get to talk about you and your company in the session a lot, we know, but please introduce yourself to the audience.
Thanks, Ron. It's a pleasure to speak with you again, and also with Kristjan. So I'm the digitalization manager at Elering. Elering is the national grid of Estonia, and I'm doing in-house and European business development in the digital area. Previously, before Elering, I co-founded a demand response company, SymPower, in Tallinn, actually, where we started with the help of the grandfather of Cleantech ForEst, and where Ron Bloomers was also our mentor. It's a pleasure to see you here again. And SymPower is, I left in 2017 when SymPower had about 12 people. Now they've grown to about 50 people, and they just closed a Series B of around 5 million euros. So they're doing well. So I have a startup background and now corporate experience for 3 years. So startups and corporates are my thing with digital.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, SymPower was big news last week, right? 5.2 million euros in a Series B, right? In order to accelerate the energy transition further. So congratulations with that, George. We'll get deeper into all this stuff later, okay? Kristjan, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Ron. My name is Kristjan Kuhi. I'm chief architect in a company called WePower. We will talk about that later, what WePower is doing. But before joining WePower, I was opposite to Georg's kind of experience working with large corporates. I was 13 years in a corporation called Ericsson, and before that I have some security and software engineering background.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the way we wanted to do this session, we had a short prep call yesterday for half an hour, and we were discussing, actually having a lot of fun, and we were thinking, okay, let's talk a little bit about the past, the present, and the future. The main topic is digitalization in energy, right? Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Ron Bloemers, and I'm the founder and managing partner of Start You Up. And the short story is that we help clean tech startups accelerate to global success. An extensive CV you can find on LinkedIn, right? So the topic of today: past, present, and future. And you've asked me to give a very short introduction, as the old is about the past, and then we go to the present and the future by our speakers, Kristjan and Georg. I think I can give a very, very rough sketch on what the energy sector was like when I was working in it, let's say in the 90s. And for the participants, I would just like you to visualize, let's say, the value chain, the old value chain of electricity power generation. It would typically go from fuel, so you either use coal or gas or something else, right? To generation, the electricity generation stations that we had, could be a coal generation station, could be gas, could be hydro, etc. And then it sort of went, to say it simple, into the wires. We call that transmission, the high voltage transmission, the 380 kilovolt transmission, right? And then it would go to distribution, where it sort of spread it out towards the households and towards industrials and to small, medium enterprises, etc., etc. And all should be fine. Right. So what happened since then? That was sort of the almost static value chain. Well, we had energy and electricity liberalization in the 90s. I happened to be involved with that in my previous job. And if I would give a rough sketch of that, it was basically the emergence of the wholesale function. So now, if you start generating electricity, you would now not feed it into the wires directly and maybe locally send it to your end customer, but now you would give it to an, let's say, electricity exchange or to a wholesale function, right? And that actually led to the fact that also digitalization sort of increased, because now you had to match supply and demand. There could be more demanders, etc. One other thing that I've observed in this time is a word that we would call third-party access. We imagine if you buy electricity in the wholesale markets, right? And if we would say that simple, you would have to be able to transport that electricity to where it's needed, maybe to your client or maybe for your own use, etc. But the wires, the transmission and distribution function, belong to somebody else, right? So the right to access actually this electricity grid would have to be regulated. Now, in most countries, the transmission became independent, too long of a technical story, but that's sort of what happened. So introduction of the wholesale function and third-party access. And then in my observation, let's say in the last years, until we arrive to the present and give our speakers the floor, you could actually see the emergence of the more decentralized functions, especially in households, I would say, right? So energy demand has changed. There's a lot of behind the meter with the customer now, where a lot of functions, let's say, increase. For instance, many customers become their own power producers. They have solar roofs, they have solar panels on their roof, they maybe have batteries in the basement. You become your energy manager yourself, again, an increase in the function of digitalization. So from this, that's by summary actually. So from this static value chain, the introduction of the wholesale function, right? Then you have the wires with third-party access, and then you have a lot of things happening decentralized, which also led to more and more digitalization in this sector. My first question would be, do you agree with this description, Georg and Kristjan, or would you have anything to add to that?
I'll say I agree, definitely. It's a very good summary of the opening. But I'll only add that the process is not yet complete. For example, the third-party access, there are still barriers. Electricity companies who want to sell you electricity, they still face barriers today around Europe. So the process is still ongoing, and it's fun to watch it unfold.
Yeah, and it differs in many countries, even in Europe, but also in the world, right? And it depends then who owns the transmission and the distribution grid, etc. It's a little bit of a patchy picture across the globe, right? Okay, Kristjan, would you have anything to add to that before we arrive in the present and then start talking about the future?
Yeah, I mean, you had very good description, so I don't have much to add to that actually.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's for people who maybe don't know too much about what we would call, in more technical terms, the electricity power generation, the electricity power value chain, right? So in terms of what has been announced by Cleantech ForEst, it set the future of energy, right? Which is a little bit broader than what we're going to discuss today. So I would like to refer to a speech. Actually, I did that speech. It's on YouTube. It's called the 2020-2050 Global Cleantech Markets Outlook. The reason why I'm happy and proud to refer to that speech, because it sort of gives of my perspective on 2020-2050 global cleantech market, so we can get that out of the way for today. And this speech, that's why I'm happy to mention it, was given in Estonia, and it was supported by Cleantech ForEst in Tallinn. There were more than 500 people present. It's 2 years ago. I think personally that maybe in the large picture, most of these conclusions still hold. But for those interested, we would like to refer to that speech for the big picture, so we can now dive a little bit more into this electricity digitalization topic of today. Okay, so let's start the discussion. So Estonia, in my view, it's a privilege to work there. The land of the unicorns. Estonia has produced 5 unicorns so far. And I hear the latest news is there's the number 6, as Erkki told me last week. And so Estonia, I don't know if people know this, is actually the world champion in producing unicorns. If you say it, unicorns per capita, blah. There was recently a big article of Sifted about this, right? So I assume that you know a little bit about startups and scale-ups. Estonia is also, in my view, a front runner in digitalization. As a country, we won't go into that, but it also hosts a lot of startups and scale-ups which are at the cutting edge of digitalization, actually. And in my view, 2 of these companies are Elering and WePower. And so, George and Kristjan, please elaborate a little bit what you're up to in these companies, what you're doing, how you see things going forward, etc. It's like a free open question. Kristjan, could we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So WePower, you described very well this energy value chain or supply chain, if you will. Then
better word is supply chain. I agree.
Yeah. So basically, what we do is we bring the players together on a single platform to enable this kind of transparent and traceable transactions between the different players. So the energy buyers, the retailers, the producers. Of course, it's a little bit more complex than that. You have like a number of other roles that are part of the chain. So basically, this is what we do, and it's all about with one single goal to make the possibility to actually to make it possible for the buyers to vote with their wallets what kind of energy mix they want to achieve and what kind of energy they want to purchase at the end of the day.
Yeah. Thank you. So what I understood, what I understand from WePower, I know them a little bit. I don't know them in depth. We discussed it. You have both individual household customers, but you also have small and medium enterprises and industrials. Did I understand that well, or is that a wrong perception?
So the ambition obviously is to go smaller and smaller when we talk about the customers, right? So that you as individual can purchase green and local and affordable energy wherever you are in the world. But currently, the majority of the energy is actually consumed by big and small industrial customers.
Yeah.
So we decided to take this kind of, let's say, strategic goal to first go and bring the big players on the platform and then go smaller and smaller. So today I would say that it's not only the big ones, but also the small and medium that are using the platform.
Great. And you're also already present in multiple countries, right? You're growing very fast.
Indeed. So as a I would say twist in the past, or we ended up in starting our business actually in Australia. So today our main business is in Australia, but we are definitely coming back to Europe and also to other countries like US and maybe also some other Asian countries.
Yeah, is that maybe because Australia is sort of a front runner in development and growth of solar energy, especially the combination of solar and battery storage? Is there a specific reason why you're so present in Australia?
I mean, as I said, it was actually by accident how we ended up in Australia. But when we came to Australia, we figured out that actually Australia has quite serious energy problems in the country. So, yeah. So it's a lot of let's say distributed generation. It's a lot of let's say old technologies. It's the renovation or kind of modernization of the full energy ecosystem is actually ongoing, and the problems we actually saw there were like immediate problems where we could help.
So what I'm hearing is a little bit, so there's a bit of the old, but there's also the emergence of the new, also because there's high solar irradiation in Australia, etc. And you are sort of shaping the, could I say, the new economy in Australia, or the new energy sector, one of the co-creators?
Oh yes.
Or is that too big?
So yes, of course. We are still too small to actually claim that position, yeah. But of course we would like to be part of that transition.
Okay, thank you, Kristjan, for that nice introduction. Which brings us to Georg. Sorry, I misspelled your name already for 7 years, Georg. I'm sorry.
Half my friends say Georg. Half my friends say Georg.
Elering, tell us all about it, and about you and your function, what you're doing, etc. Very interesting. You're also busy in Europe, for instance, I heard, but I leave the floor to you.
Sure. So I'll start with what I'm doing. What I've done at SimPower and Elering is all to do with climate change. So my mission for my career, if our generation ends up retiring, then I will be retiring in the year 2050, as I'm 30 years old now. So nicely, 2050 has to be the time when we're carbon neutral. So hopefully by the end of my career, Europe will be carbon neutral. But then again, my 2 kids are currently 1 and 2 year olds, so they'll be my age at that time. So that gives me a bit of perspective whether it's possible to do something so fast. I personally think it can. I think we can innovate and do it. So that's what I'm helping to contribute. So enough about me. So about Elering. Elering is the so you mentioned the value chain. Elering is the wires in between the producers and the consumers. Yeah. We maintain the high voltage cables, and we also in Estonia as a national grid, we also have the gas transmission. So we do electricity and gas across the country. And also at Elering, we basically our task is to ensure the security of supply. We have engineers who have models running 10 years into the future, looking at all sorts of scenarios. What can happen? Do we have enough power generation? Do we need to invest in some other parts? And we also have a massive control room with a screen that's like 10 meters wide, which has the entire power system everywhere, and people, dispatchers, sit there and make turn things on and off. So we have all that under one roof. Plus, Elering also is a guarantees of origin and renewable energy subsidy agency. So we have like 250 people, and we're fully government owned. So that's something to mention as well. That Elering is a independent player. We do not aim to make profit, and our task is to ensure security of supply. And we want to do that via well-functioning energy markets. We want to enable companies like WePower, and also in the future companies like SimPower, to be able to do their services and to provide energy services that we need in the future. My task specifically in the energy market support is to build those digital tools. So we see that energy markets depend on IT to function, and my role as digitalization business developer is to build those IT tools. And we see that as a country of 1.3 million people, our energy market solutions depend also on innovations that happen outside of Estonia, even though, as you said, we're a land of unicorns. We still can't innovate in every single aspect, that we need help from others too. So our job at Elering is to ensure that energy markets work nicely all around Europe. And some barriers we've identified, that the 2 projects that I'm leading. One is access to data. So we have 100 million smart meters around Europe. There's another 100 million in North America, and I hear 600 million in Asia. But these smart meter data sit together in the old value chain. So the new players of the value chain don't have access to this data, which is a problem. They can do cool things with that data. The second thing is what WePower, Kristjan is helping companies do and people do, is buy green energy. Elering, as a renewable subsidy agency and issuer of guarantees of origin, we should be allowing and enabling people to buy green energy in real time as well. So there's some digital tools and market barriers to address. So basically, Elering is the wires company responsible for security of supply, and we see that the best way to do that is with well-functioning energy markets, and we need digital tools for well-functioning energy markets. And I'm the business guy to do those things.
Thank you. So wires with a lot of digitalization around it, to say it as I would tell it my mom, basically, right? Which brings us actually to the core topic of today, blockchain and digitalization. So before we go a little bit deeper in that, Kristjan, could you explain to the audience what blockchain is and how this might affect electric power digitalization now and in the future? I mean, I work a lot with startups too, all over the world. Blockchain is a bit of a buzzword for startups, if I may say so. But let's discuss how you view that specifically for electric power and electric power digitalization.
Okay.
So explain to us what it is, and explain it to people who don't have a clue, please.
Don't have a clue. Okay.
So say it simple. Don't be too technical.
Yeah. I'm an architect, so actually I have a tendency to go into the technology, but
go.
On a really high level, I think actually first of all we should invent a new name for blockchain, because like this previous hype has ruined the name. So everybody is kind of hoping that blockchain is a silver bullet and solving all of the problems.
Yeah.
I was working when it came along, the term blockchain. I was working in a big corporation, and it was literally all of the people in the company were running around with a blockchain hype and hope that it will solve all of the issues in the world. But anyway, just in a nutshell, blockchain is, for us at least, it's an accounting tool that enables to make sure that the data and the individual variables and formulas are immutable and transparent always. And then there are like different generation of blockchain. So the first generation offered this kind of immutable event sequence, so that you cannot claim that any event happened before that particular event, so this was the initial promise. Then the second generation added this kind of distributed architecture to the formula, so that no individual player can change the technology nor the mechanism how this kind of immutability is achieved. And the third layer is automation, or some call them smart contracts. This is actually that enables to take the data that is stored in the chain and make immutable formulas or immutable code on top of that, so that you can actually put together the data, which is guaranteed to be the same data that it was in the time of writing, and the calculations that are proven to be the same as they were like promised to be. So I think this combination in general is quite powerful. However, the current blockchain technologies have their limitations, and I think we see 2, 3, 4 more generations of different technologies before it is very, very widely adopted.
So where do you see it? What, if I can paraphrase you in my understanding with what you say some people see it as a silver bullet. That's actually not the case. It has different applications, and that's where it can be very useful. We actually use that also for our accounting. But going forward, there could be more applications if we continue to go in that direction. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think so, because I mean, when we define a problem, and definitely in energy, this kind of sustainability and carbon kind of issues in the energy. So you cannot solve the problem without let's say this kind of setting the goals and then this kind of honest and transparent accounting. Whether are you like going towards the solution, or you are actually walking away from it. So this is actually what the blockchain is capable of doing, and where it plugs in.
Yeah, thank you, George. What do you think? So blockchain, in my view, so blockchain is a little bit more of a narrow definition than digitalization, which is a much wider definition, actually. You want to elaborate on this too? We discussed it briefly yesterday. You have quite an outspoken opinion about this.
Sure. Yeah. So I haven't personally seen. Maybe that's my own fault, but I haven't seen scalable blockchain solutions yet. I mean, a lot of things have been promised, but I haven't seen them working at scale. But I'm sure they will come. I'm a technology optimist in general. But Kristjan made a very good with the 3 generations. The first generation has been used, I like to say, since the last millennium, since at least the end of 90s. There's been blockchain in use, also in the Estonian e-government to secure logs, basically to make sure that the data logs are correct. But that's one thing. But the other thing to mention in the energy industry, at least in Europe and in the way we're structured, is that it's highly regulated. The law says who does what in the energy industry, and there's also these grid companies are independent. So at least from Elering's point of view, there is always a trusted third party. So one of the problems blockchain solve is that if there's lack of trust, then you can trust the technology. But at least in the energy industry, there are these companies like Elering that also ensure market functioning, and we can also do these contracts. We don't need to put them in a block. We can say that we will pay you at that amount of time. That amount of money if you do those things, and we can implement those also in business logic. So at least in, I think, a large majority of next problems we're facing in energy today can be used with today's players and today's solutions, and they just need to be rolled out and executed. I think the majority of problems just need execution, not innovation.
Yeah, and so if you put digitalization besides that, it's a wider space. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Digitalization itself means blockchain is one tool, one digital tool among many, and as tools they are for some purpose. And of course, digitalization is a way to make either a business more efficient or to do new business. It's one of 2 things. So you're either doing things faster with more automation, and maybe saving money by being smarter. That's I think the majority of what digitalization is understood as in at least in large corporates. So, for example, should we build a line here, or can we rely on demand response instead to send power the other way and therefore save a few million, tens of millions? Those sort of questions. And the other part of digital is to allow new business altogether. So, I mean, I think the classical example is Uber, of course, that you can now order taxis, and this sort of completely changes the way your business is done. Although those things are more rare. Maybe WePower is one of the examples of doing completely new business. So digital
would you have maybe one or two, a little bit, if you can, a little bit more specific examples on how digitalization plays a role in Elering, to make it a little bit, concrete for the audience?
Of course. So Elering is, as I mentioned, we have about 250 people, and in 2017, when I joined, we had 10 people in the IT department. Now there's about 45, 50. So that's one of the parts. Digital
speaks for itself.
We are realizing that we are less of a wires company and more of an IT company, that everything we do depends on IT solutions, like everything. So digital is how we work. That's just in everything. And when we talk about digitalization specifically at Elering, then it's a strategy for becoming a more efficient company and for allowing energy markets to function properly with digital tools. So when we talk about digitalization, is in order to achieve those business aims. So what we're doing is we have essentially the most important part of how we approach digitalization in Elering is what projects do we invest in, what do we do next, what do we improve first, what's more important than the others. And so digital in that sense is just like any other business activity. We prioritize and we execute, and we create value.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's a little bit on the generic level still. I'm looking at Erkki. Erkki, are there any questions from the audience so far that you might want to ask?
There are so far no questions at the moment. People are eagerly listening.
Okay, then we're
I'll answer your question then more specifically. Just one concrete example of the biggest.
Yeah, please.
Is, of course, we have 150 substations. We have thousands of kilometers of lines and lots of pipes, and we need to maintain them. So some guys have to go and check whether everything's all right. And historically, how it's been done is that that a power line, the manufacturer says that it will last 40 years. And so after 40 years, you replace them no matter what. You just go there, you live there for 40 years, done, you replace it. But that's sort of inefficient because maybe the power line is in a really nice area, it doesn't get any salt onto it, so it lasts for longer. So what we're now doing is we're collecting data on them. So people go around with iPads taking pictures, and there's a program and some algorithms in the background to assess the likelihood that it will keep on for another 10 years, another 20 years. In addition, we account for what's the risk if this power line falls down, how bad is it, does the city lose power for a while, or does nothing happen? So we take the risk times the likelihood it will live, lose, and then we see what should we invest first. Which lines should we fix first? And all that is just working with lots and lots of data, and it can't be done on paper. It can't be done on Excel. Well, it's very hard to do in Excel. So there we clearly need digital tools, because there's a lot of data input, a lot of data being gathered about the status of the wires and the pipes and all the equipment, plus algorithms about who and where to invest. So that's something that is a very clear example of what you need to do with digitalization to increase the efficiency of it.
Yeah. So as a metaphor, and I'm exaggerating, so back in the old days, you needed the ladder to get to the wires, trying not to get electrified. Right, for operation and maintenance, and now you do that with a lot of digital data in terms of predictive models and stuff like that, in order to make it more concise, more effective, and more efficient. Is that what I'm hearing?
So you go, you climb the right ladders. You don't climb.
Okay, thank you, Kristjan. Maybe you have one or two more specific examples in WePower where digitalization really plays a role, just to make it tangible for the audience, so not to have it too abstract.
Oh, yeah, indeed. I mean, WePower is all about digitalization, and the companies like WePower cannot, I would say, exist without data. I'm very happy. We have spent quite a lot of time together with Georg and Elering on kind of those data exchange and how to make the grid related and power companies related data available for different players like startups as we are. So we build on data. Maybe just what I heard from George is that blockchain is just a tool. Yes, of course, it's just a tool. But just to a little bit give some practical value on that using of that tool. So we are using blockchain for 2-3 purposes. One is the ownership tracking. So who owns what exactly? And the second of all is transaction logs. So who of the players is transacting with another player, and this is what the technology is all about, right? And the third is what George also said is the making sure that the logs stay safe and they are there. It's quite easy for big players to say that we are trusted and we are big and we can guarantee everything. For us, we are a small player. It takes only a couple of incidents and bad communication to actually lose the trust. And for us, this kind of tool is very, very important, so that we can always be sure that the data that we use under our calculations and transactions is actually adequate and right.
Yeah, thank you. So to both of you, what I'm hearing also in a little pre-discussion of half an hour yesterday, you both see, I would almost say, an increasing future for digitalization and blockchain, right? It's also where your companies are at the forefront. So the next obvious question from my side to both of you is, what are the potential bottlenecks to be resolved for blockchain and digitalization in order to flourish in the future or in the near future? Do you see bottlenecks, and how could they be resolved for this digital future actually to emerge in the electricity sector? Feel free to start, one of you, George, Kristjan.
I'll go ahead, why not? So I work with bottlenecks all the time. So at least being a digitalization manager and a corporate means that you are working with bottlenecks. You're trying to solve them. I mean, if there weren't any bottlenecks, then there wouldn't be need for my job. But basically, I like to split it perhaps into at least three topics. One is what are the bottlenecks inside companies? Then what are the bottlenecks sort of nationally and sort of internationally? So there's like 3 layers. So one inside companies. We can talk about digitalization and fancy tools, but the reality is that most people are still copying from one Excel to the other, and maybe just keep data on paper. So it's nice to talk about automation and for example the optimized grid investments, but the reality is that people still going around with notepads and pens. So you can't do fancy algorithms without data. So that's clearly like you need to do that. So install sensors, train people. That's perhaps the most immediate, besides management procedures and project execution and so on. Perhaps I think on a national level to mention, and you mentioned several times, Estonia has been a success in the e-government area and also in some digital education. Largely, because of education. We've had in schools, so there's a lot of like cultural acceptance of tools. There's success stories. There's also the ID card and technical solutions nationally, and identifying people online is actually a very important thing if you want to build digital solutions. And in most European countries, not even to talk about globally, that's still a problem. People have maybe I have an ID card, but it only works for some government services, but not everywhere. Whereas in Estonia, with the same ID card, you can do everything, including paying for your.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second here? We didn't discuss this yesterday, but it's so in some countries, people have the perception. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. Please give us a short answer, please. How would that go against feelings of privacy of people? Because there are people who are sort of quote quote, I'm exaggerating, but quote quote afraid of it. Right, because they think, but then all my data go online, and everybody knows everything about me.
If the Estonian government implemented like Belgium, I would be afraid as well.
Okay. But the short answer is, the short question is, how do you deal with privacy in that? Of course, it's all great.
Basically, we have a very high trust in our government for IT because they have done a very good job. And there's also about my data, there's a portal that all Estonians know, and you can go and you can check who has looked at your data for when, what purpose. It's very transparent, and it's basically that's the reason that Estonians trust it. It just works. And a few years ago, there was an issue with ID cards. It was a major scandal, and a lot of people lost faith, but thankfully that was fixed. So good communication on government side, good implementation. I think those are the keys.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt. So you were at the national level, but I know many people in the audience deal with that. So I wanted to ask that question in between. So then you were at the
international level is just regulation. I mean, harmonizing the way energy markets work. So back in the SimPower days, one of the biggest challenges as a startup was to understand how energy markets work in different countries. Like if you understand Finland, you don't understand Sweden. I mean, suddenly everything works differently. And you mentioned that the value chain is being opened up. Different countries are opening up different parts differently. So the regulation is a major barrier to digital companies because we're a Tower of Babel when it comes to energy markets in Europe. We need to harmonize, and it's a major task for the European Commission, but it will take a decade easily.
Yeah. Okay. Kristjan, do you have anything to add for this question, or can we go to the next question?
Yeah, I think everything that Georg said is actually correct, and the major bottleneck is actually still the manual activities. So I've been in a position not with WePower though, but earlier when the people say that I've been here for 40 years. I know all the substation, all the lines by heart. I have touched the lines, so my fingernails have been burned. So I use my fingernails and everything to test the voltage. So I mean, it is still there, and there is nothing wrong with that actually. I mean, obviously touching power lines with fingernails is maybe a little bit wrong, but anyway, there is generation change, and those people need also, besides those people, we need new people, and it takes damn lot of time for people to manually get to know every substation in the country and all the line in the country. So this know-how needs to be captured somehow, and today we have all the technologies available. Everything is there that you need actually to first of all capture everything, and second of all start optimizing everything. So it's only about starting to use it.
So the words I'm hearing is like people, harmonization, regulation, education. The technology is there. Is that what I'm hearing from the both of you?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you agree with Georg that he said this could be 10 years out before we're quote there? Georg, that's what you said, right? Do you agree with that? Yeah. So which sort of brings me to the last question on this, and I'm going to talk about startups and their role in this. So how would you see the end game for this? So what is in your view, let's say the ideal end game for digitalization and blockchain in the electricity sector? I'm hearing this is sort of 10 years out. How do you see that end game emerging? Georg, let me start with you.
I think there's one observation that hasn't yet reached sort of the consciousness of people thinking about energy, and I'll get philosophical for 1 minute if you allow me. So basically the concept is that we're actually
like philosophy,
an area of abundance of energy. Like most of the way of thinking of our societies comes from the farming age, when you had to store for winter, and you have to like work really hard over the summer so that you get enough to eat in the winter. And that's how we think about energy for some reason. When I always read that what we need is seasonal storage so that we can survive the winter and so on, and we'll be lacking. There's a problem with flexibility, and we can't go to 100% because what do you do at night? But I find those slightly misled, because you can just put twice as much solar and you can put 4 times as much wind as you need. I mean, around Estonia, we have a peak demand, well, average demand of like 1 gigawatt. Just remember, 1 is our average demand. We have potential for wind of 4, and we already have 0.5 of sun like today or this year. So this summer there'll probably be some summer Saturday afternoon in Estonia, and we're a very northern country where all of our power consumption is powered by solar in Estonia. And what that causes, every country is going there. We're still installing more and more renewables. There will be so much superabundance of energy. There will be so much left over that many hours of the day, the price will go zero or negative, which basically means there's too much. And so we have to get rid of the thinking that there's not enough energy. There's going to be loads of energy, and we can redesign all the industrial processes and everything. Of course, Bill Gates said that we overestimate the change next year, but underestimate in 10 years. I think in 10 years, we'll definitely be in the world of energy abundance. So that's one thing that startups might take into account, that the energy costs are already going at least some hours of the year into negative territory. What can we do with that?
I couldn't agree more. I've been looking into this myself the whole of my career. It's the story of experience and learning curves. You could actually sort of grossly predict, let's say 10, 15 years ago, what the learning and experience curves in terms of the cost reduction of solar and wind and PV and a lot of other, now batteries also, a lot of other technologies do. And you can clearly see that in a direction where energy is becoming actually quite cheap if you're proclamate renewable energy, and where it's becoming abundant. I would totally agree if you allow me to join you in the philosophy also.
Silicon is sand. I mean, you put some other doping materials into it, but silicon is sand that it lasts for 25 years. So I mean, it's so ridiculously cheap to get electricity.
So reasons to be optimistic. Are you optimistic in terms of technology and saving the world from climate change to as the big question?
So that's the thing. We say that it's what you need is a lot of investment to go to a world of abundance, but you still need a lot of digital tools to actually control all those power plants and all those demand units so that they are consuming at the same time. You still need a lot of control systems. You need to automate all of this. And I don't myself want to be looking at the energy price every hour and then turning the heating on if I want something to do that for me. So there'll be a lot of automation to deal with the abundance of electricity. And I think there'll be a lot of new business models that we can do so many more things if energy is free.
So I don't think it's philosophical. I think it's just experience and learning curves. So not many people are quite familiar with it, but I'm doing this already for quite a while, and you can actually see it coming. It's actually in my speech that I just recommended. Kristjan, would you agree with that? Do you see a bright, abundant world in front of you in maybe, let's say, 10 years plus, or feel free to disagree also. This is an open discussion.
Well, it either goes that way or the opposite way, right?
But that's always right?
Yeah. But since I'm also a little bit optimistic person, so I tend to agree with this kind of statements.
Okay. So great. Is there anything to add for this question? Otherwise, we'll dive in the last 10 minutes into what this all could mean for startups and scale-ups.
Yeah, maybe if I add to this one and start with the next one is that obviously we are in the beginning of that change actually. It's has the Churchill said, okay, I'm not gonna quote it. It's kind of end of the beginning, right? So it's one of the largest industry we are talking about in the world, right? And what we know from physics is that to get large things moving, it takes a lot of effort, right? So it is moving a little bit, but it's not moving as fast as we maybe would like to. But when it gets moving, then it's moving. So I think when we talk about the small startups and the initiatives and ideas and innovation, then I think this is maybe the main point to take in consideration. So you are somewhere in the beginning where things do not move fast. So you need to spend quite a lot of energy to get things moving. And that energy directly translates to effort and also money. So you need quite a lot of that.
This just comes to my mind right now. I would like to add to this. I'm more than 25 years in the renewables and cleantech industry myself. So when you saw electricity liberalization, that sort of paved the way for the emergence of renewables, right? Because without third-party access in this might have been difficult. It's a bit philosophical because you cannot discuss what didn't happen, but And now you see sort of this third wave of digitalization. What has surprised me is I agree with George that innovations are usually coming quicker than you think. And there's even scientific research about it, I think. I remember that in my time, you know, when I was like really cheering the emergence of renewables, I went way too slow. I was impatient, etc. If I now look back, I go like, whoa, the world has changed enormously and so fast. So it's also a little bit like if you look at it, you know, up front, and then if you look back, suddenly you go like, whoa, the world has changed enormously.
Okay, so impatient people make the world move, so that's good. That's good, Ron.
Yeah, that's nice, and we hope that startups and scale-ups in the Beamline Accelerator will contribute to that, right? Because you sort of paved the way for a conclusion which actually might a little bit be obvious. Because would you see a lot of opportunities for clean tech startups and scale-up activities in this space? Let me set up you with my personal opinion, because I personally do not believe in this one-off big solution. Right? I'm going to exaggerate again. We need new nuclear in order to solve the CO2. I'm more of, so especially with the circular economy, we need 1,000 bees, which all will have their role in this new and reverse value change for the circular economy. We're basically setting up a whole new economy. So my assumption is that there's a plethora of opportunities for clean tech startups and scale-ups in this area. But I don't know what your vision is on this, especially for digitalization, George.
Do stay away from nuclear. Actually, did masters on nuclear and went away from it right away as soon as I understood economics. So I went away when you look at economics. But basically, opportunities. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I just thought of a few, but maybe something that again has a sort of missed attention perhaps too much is the fact that carbon price is going up. I mean, there's an emissions trading scheme in Europe. The Commission is very ambitious about it. It's already costing 35 or so per ton, which is roughly the same as the electricity price. So if you sell electricity and you make it out of coal, you get nothing. So that's the order of magnitude at which the carbon price already is, and it has to go much higher in order to do the carbon. Basically, trust the fact that the policy makers are serious about the carbon price, and you can make some business models based on that already. That's something as a blue thinking. I mean, but follow the problems. I mean, there's so many problems and challenges in electricity: flexibility, storage, price fluctuations, transportation, people demanding green. I mean, you can take your pick, really.
Yeah, but I see sometimes I hear in the Climate Launchpad. The Climate Launchpad is by now the world's largest green business competition, ran online in 56 countries on 5 continents last year. If you have a green business idea, go to www.climatelaunchpad.org. It's running this year. Please do so. So clean tech is, in my view, broader than only energy. It can be water, it can be agriculture, agtech, blah. But sometimes people have, or young people have the idea that the energy space and the digitalization space is sort of taken already, right? If there's so much already, if you read about. But I don't think so. But can you explain to them? Can you explain to them how many opportunities there still are? Or maybe give a few examples even.
It's all open. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, there are incumbent players, huge companies who do things, but at the end of the day, they're also people, and they have their jobs, and they have problems in their jobs. So you can start providing them with help, and it's just really up to you. Most likely, you know much more about technology than we do. So go ahead and make the innovations. Energy industry is changing everywhere, and so the opportunities are there, and nobody knows the answers.
Okay, and Kristjan, would you agree with that? Could you elaborate for 1 or 2 minutes max? Still on it, we're reaching the end. I would still like to give the word to Erkki to have a closing word in this session. So we sort of see multiple opportunities. So if you have ideas, etc., go to the Beamline Accelerator, talk to the Cleantech ForEst team, bring forward your ideas, because here the experts say in the next 10 years, it's basically completely opening up. That's what I'm hearing, right? Because we're just at the start of this. Do you agree with that, Kristjan?
Yeah, if it's completely opening up, that's obviously a separate discussion, I think. So
I might exaggerate. I'm known for exaggeration.
There is always gonna be this regulated part and kind of the infrastructure and everything related to that and security. But yeah, there is tons of opportunities, obviously, and advice maybe for startups and who are starting is that look at with open eyes and talk a lot with guys like Georg who are deeply involved, and why not with those 40-year in business guys who know everything. So first maybe they are a little bit skeptical what you can bring, but once they understand, then you get tons of value out of them.
Yeah, thank you. I get an app from Erkki here. Erkki, I can't read it very well. So you say there is a question. If you hear this, could you ask the question? This is an audience question.
Yes, indeed. There's actually a vibrant discussion going on. I'm going to post it here for the people.
Hey, that was the intention. But I'm looking at the time as the moderator. We have 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, I know. But as the interest is so...
It's up to you. You're the boss.
We'll go slowly, steadily, a little bit over time. I hope that's okay with the audience as well. But there's a question. You briefly touched upon it as well, but it's a really kind of a good topic. So how much is the regulation governing your activities slowing down the current digitization ambition? And do you fight the regulation or bend around it? So that's kind of a question for the both sides here. Right?
I'll take it because I'll start, and I think with Kristjan we have, I assume we have different approaches because at least we are working with, and just so it because we are Elering is a government-owned company. 100% of what we do is covered by regulation. We only do with that which regulation allows. So, for example, the data access topic that we're working on is a law in electricity market law saying that we are responsible for information exchange. But what we see are challenges and problems and like lack of regulation in some areas. So what we're working on and what I'm also working myself on is helping draft some regulation on a European level. So we are definitely working with regulators, with the existing and making change from within. And there's a lot of scope you can do for change from within. And especially from a country like Estonia, where you have so much knowledge in one building with its 250 people at Elering, do the same amount of work that 5 organizations and 5,000 people do in France. So if I want to know something about something, I go and ask my colleague and they know everything. So we can really come up with ideas faster and implement them faster and help them scale up with partners in Europe. So we work from the inside.
Yeah. So if I add from my perspective, then there is nothing actually that prevents us doing what we do in the regulation, and we don't kind of try to find a way around it, nor try to fight with the regulation. However, what I would actually see is that the regulator would use more or demand more the use of the data in their activities. So there is tons of data available in Elering's databases. Why not take it and start using it? So there is like a lot of decisions are still based on gut feeling and kind of perception of I don't know what. So there is, I think, generic problem in the world that regulators don't use the data that is today available to create the regulations.
Yeah, Elering also had their European Energy Access Data Pilot kind of program. That would be really interesting to hear what kind of emerged from there or what kind of solutions were built. But I guess that's another topic for another webinar. We're running out of time. A quick question to Georg. Which renewable energy segment is the most attractive for investors and is on a high growth rate?
Well, I'm not an investor, so you probably can take better advice, but as I have the opportunity to say something. So, I mean, renewable energy is now majorly capital invested. So if you're asking that question, then you're probably not a professional investor having billions of euros to invest. So probably some digital tools, potential with a lot of potential to scale where you can invest smaller amounts are probably more profitable. It's the production of energy problem has been solved, and it just needs capital now. So that steamroll is going. So there's a lot of innovation going on around it. there's one, somebody said that getting to 100% renewables takes two things. One, you have to invest a lot, and then you have to do a lot of smart solutions so that when you are consuming electricity at night, how do you get that solar into the night? Do you store? Do you turn things on and off? And that's where you can do a lot with relatively small investments.
Yeah. Cleantech 2.0, right? It's many VCs use that terminology in the sense that it's now basically the software around the physical assets that is going to be very important also in my view in the coming years. Would you agree with that, Kristjan and Georg? Is that a yes? Okay. Erkki, questions. It's now up to you. I'm giving it back to you. It's exactly 3 o'clock here in Amsterdam. I hope so in Estonia too. It's been a privilege. I have enjoyed the two speakers. I'm giving the moderation back to you, and it's been a privilege in this hour, and I've greatly enjoyed it. Thank you. So could you're closing? Maybe there's still some questions. Whatever. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe just one last question, and then we'll definitely gonna end. There's not much to say from my side. I said it all in the beginning. Join the Textiles event, join the Beamline Accelerator. All those, Ron, George, and Kristjan are also mentors in this Beamline Accelerator. And in this accelerator, we are choosing the best mentors from the field. So it's very field dedicated people who are doing it, operating, mentoring, and developing your business if you're joining it. But the last question, well, it's a bit so-and-so if it's spot on to the topic, but it's really definitely an interesting one to consider. So the uptake of renewables, uptake of new kind of technologies that require new raw materials. So we're probably talking about, battery storage, things like that. They require quite a lot of lithium and other rare metals. So there's an intriguing question. Would you be okay with destroying that habitat at home for the transition? I guess the transition is energy transition here described. And have you considered the possible downsides of renewable energy abundance or uptake of renewable energy?
No, I wouldn't be happy with destroying my home, but I don't think that's necessary. If you look at how much damage is done by fossil fuels, we'll be saving a lot of environmental issues, not just climate change, but also everything else. So, and also about abundance. There's for 100 years, people have predicted we'll run out of oil. We have not run out of oil. Now people are predicting we're running out of lithium. We're not going to run out of lithium. We'll find ways around it. We'll find more supplies of it, which are also clean.
Yeah, can I add to this? It's materials innovation, right? Is very important on the input side of our economies, right? That's also in my speech. So I believe it will not even stay with lithium-ion alone. And then as the oldie between you, I would like to finish also a bit philosophical with that answer, Erkki. In my view, in my career, what I've always seen is it will never be perfect. Renewables are also not perfect, but it's way better, right? So I would say the secret of change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And it will never be perfect. But I think we're going in the right direction. That would be my answer.
That is absolutely true. And I believe this is also the best place to wrap it up here. There was some questions that were unanswered, but I hope we will find the answers for them under the discussion as well. From my side, from Cleantech ForEst and Beamline, we want to thank you so much for being here, coming to this webinar, also for the audience, for tuning in. There was quite a lot of us here all across the globe, and we'll be having our second webinar also on the smart city topics on the 20th of April. So you might want to tune that up as well and mark it in your calendar.
One last question. One last question. How do people reach Beamliner, Erkki? How do they reach the Beamline Accelerator? What should they do?
Well, we have a quite good SEO. So if you Google Beamline Accelerator, you'll find that instantly, or just simply go beamline.fund. And you'll be there quickly.
It will show by itself?
Yes.
Okay.
And for Ron, George, and Kristjan, thank you very much. For audience, thank you for tuning in. We'll be seeing you around soon, somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kristjan.
Bye-bye.